Erica Desper, the founder of the Confident Parenting Collective, and I'm on a mission to bring parents who are navigating their parenting journey with a child who has learning differences, disabilities, delays, mental health challenges, to bring you information that you need, maybe even before you need it. So as a parent myself, I've found the acronyms of this journey to be very confusing and overwhelming. The special education process has its own acronyms. The mental health world has them too. It's a bit of an alphabet soup. So I am joined today by Peter Fornetti. He's a therapist at Open Mind Psychological. Thank you for joining me, Peter.
Thank you, Erica, and thank you for everything that you're doing with such a great organization.
Thank you. And we're going to just let you fill us in on this whole alphabet soup. What do all the things mean, and what types of therapy might be the right fit for what types of challenges? I
Yeah,
kick it over to you.
yeah, and it is exactly that alphabet soup, and it starts with even our levels of care. And we hear IOP, we hear PHP, we hear outpatient, we hear inpatient. What does all of that mean? And so when we look at our levels of care, we start with inpatient care. And inpatient care is the most intensive.
Yep.
It can be hospitalization or it could be residential. Hospitalization short term, residential's 30 days or longer. And that is the most intensive. They live there, they stay there. And then next is PHP, which is partial hospitalization. It might be referred to as partial.
Okay.
And that is a 5-day program. You aren't living there, but let's say you're going home at night. And they're doing therapy there. They're doing a lot of group work. They're doing some educational things if they're at the education age, as well. And then we go down to IOP, which is intensive outpatient programming. And that's usually just like afternoons, 3 days a week, for a total of 9 or so hours. And that can be broken into many different parts, whether it's community-based, family-based, multi-systematic therapy, or IBHS, which is intensive behavioral services, which at one point was called wraparound services. At another point, it was called BHRS. So IBHS is the new version of that. It's all the same, but it's intensive behavioral health services. And that specifically can be provided in the home, in the school, and in the community.
Even that was helpful already.
Yeah, and that is a lot, and there's like so much you can go into. Family-based is in your home. There's a 24/7 service line. You usually have 2 therapists that come into your home, that do family systems work.
Okay.
So it's working on the family dynamic as well as the person. IBHS is the most, I guess it has the least structure and is like the most adaptable per family, because it can be in the home, it can be in the school, and it can be in the community. So that's why it originally had that wraparound service, because it is that wraparound. And then we break it down into outpatient, which is about 1 to 2 hours a week. It's maybe 50-minute sessions. It's what we are at Open Mind Psychological.
More like our standard therapy.
Yep. It is what you would think of standard therapy.
Awesome. Okay, great.
So that is the levels of care, which can be a lot. And usually you would go for an evaluation, and then you would figure out what's best for your child, what's best for you as an individual, as well. And then when we're thinking of therapy, right, that's just levels of care. Now we have all of these other terms on
therapy.
on types of therapy, and all of these different places have different things. So in outpatient, a lot of what we're talking about is evidence-based or informed practices. And so IOPs will have them, the partials will have them, inpatients will have them, and they'll all be specified towards whatever the program that child or parent or whomever is in. So it could be addictions based, it could be mood disorder based, it could be a lot of different things. But for all of them, we have different acronyms. So I'm going to start with some of the most common ones, which is CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And CBT is broken. There's a lot of different versions of it for
We need a flow
different.
chart or something.
Yes, there's a ton of different versions of it that, like, sometimes it's mindful based, sometimes it's for specific things. But it all builds down to our thoughts and our behaviors impact our emotions. And that is the CBT philosophy. The next big is dialectic behavioral therapy. And that's DBT. That's the balance between validation, this acceptance of who you are as a person, and your challenges, as well as how you can benefit changing. So it's accepting who you are, and then how do we change? And so CBT and DBT might be heard a lot, and they are similar in a lot of ways, but they're different also. And then that rolls into ACT, which is spelt out ACT, but it's ACT, which is acceptance commitment therapy.
Okay, that's a new one for me.
That's a new one. It's like part of a third wave of therapy. So it's mindful based. It's kind of right. It's accepting who you are. It fits into some of the DBT principles, but it also has a new twist on it. And that might be for an older child, not so much for a younger child.
Okay.
And then when we're thinking of parent-child interactive and the interactions at home, one thing that's really helpful is PCIT therapy, which is parent-child interaction therapy. And this is best for 2 or 3 to 7. So our younger kiddos, working with dysregulated behavior. And it's broken into 2 different parts. The first part is child-led play and therapy, and then it's parent-led. So it works with dysregulation of behavior.
And the cool thing about that, to my knowledge, is that in most scenarios, or maybe all, the parents wearing an earpiece where the therapist is literally telling them what to do and say,
you're being
version.
coached. You're being
Right.
coached exactly
Which
how
I
to.
think is what's so hard for us as parents sometimes, is like, I read the book, I know what I'm supposed to do, but in the moment, all that kind of like melts away.
Yeah.
So I could imagine that being incredibly helpful.
Yeah, and it gives parents confidence, because they know from a therapist what they're hearing, what they should be saying right in the moment, that they can take home. Another group that's getting more substance and like backing is called SPACE, and it's supportive parenting, anxious child, emotional group. And that's something, just if for parenting an anxious child, how do we go about that? How does the kid go about that? So that's something that's gaining space.
And
then,
just to clarify, it's not like all therapists do all these things. If you learn about SPACE or parent-child interaction therapy, it's specialized, and you're going to have to find someone who's certified, qualified to do that particular type of therapy.
And there are a lot of therapists who do a lot of these different things.
Okay.
Because PCIT and in particular EMDR, which we'll talk about later, those are very specialized, and there's a protocol for them. But a lot of people are trained in like CBT, DBT, ACT, and so those bigger concepts you'll find with a lot of therapists. But making sure that your therapist is a good fit for you as a parent, and then you for their child as well, is something that I always like to say and put out there, because not all therapists are a good fit, even if the therapy model that they use is working.
It's so true. We've experienced that.
Yeah. Have those hard conversations with the therapist, because it's important, and the therapist should be open to it. Couple more, EMDR. It's for trauma. Specifically, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that is a way that we move our eyes, or our bilateral movement and stimulation, how we desensitize to a situation and reprocess that situation. Um, it's not for our super young kiddos, more like 10 plus. Some people do it as young as 4, but again, they're going to be very specialized and looking for that.
I didn't prep you for this question, so forgive me if you can't give an answer, but with respect to EMDR, when I think of trauma, I think of like an isolated incident. You know, you saw a car crash and it was scary or whatever. Is it true that trauma, though, can be more like, I've had a stressful school experience my entire life, and that is processed as a trauma?
Yeah.
Can it be more
Hmm.
pervasive? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it can be absolutely that. It can be small microcosms of trauma that build over time that make us feel a certain way about instances or words or triggers.
Mhm.
Uh, so it doesn't have to be an isolated event to suffer
Okay,
from trauma.
great. Thank you.
Mhm. And then ERP, which is exposure response prevention. That's for our folks with more an OCD, phobias, um, and sometimes generalized anxiety, where we expose our client to something, and then we work on their responses to it. Um,
Got it. So like
and again,
intense fear of bees, for example, which
mhm,
I'm pulling from my own
yeah,
family.
yeah, and so working with that again, that will be somebody who's trained in that modality. And then there's ABA, which is applied
Mhm.
behavioral analysis. And that is for our developmental or behavioral needs. Um, it's working on specifically behaviors, where like a CBT model or DBT model works on other things as well as the behavior. Um,
And I
and
know
then,
there's been some controversy surrounding ABA. Is it just a matter of like what you said before, finding it's going to be the best fit for some, but not
mhm.
for all, and that's individual?
Yeah, I think that goes for all of therapies. Some of them work for people, and some of them don't work for people. Um, and and it's the job of the therapist and the job of the child or the parent to see if things are going well.
Mhm.
If we're seeing improvements, how can we change? How can we maybe change our modality in sessions from a CBT to a DBT, or an ACT to maybe we're seeing a phobia and we need an ERP
Mhm.
um, model. So it it's not straightforward. To
Really?
sum up everything, we've talked about thus far, it's
Right.
we have a lot of acronyms. They, to some extent, depend on where we are in the country as well as what we need as an individual seeking out a service.
And should it be on the person seeking, in this case, the parent? Do we need to know what type of therapy is best for our child, or is it best to just start sort of the standard way, and any good therapist is going to be
Hmm.
able to say, you know, I think in addition your child needs EMDR, or instead of they need?
Hmm. I think it's both. If a parent is able to do some research, great, right? If we can get into the right thing right away, that's wonderful. But it is the job of the therapist to know how to help
Okay.
the child and the parent, and what is best, and say, hey, this isn't working from what my knowledge base is to help you. Let's try this, and then refer them to somewhere else.
Got it.
Whether
And
that
is it
be in,
common to need to combine different types of therapy over time, or is it generally like if one's the right fit, it's going to be all you need?
I like to look at it like in different situations, we need different things.
Mhm.
Just like a situation arises, and we might have to look at it differently. We might have to take and accept ourselves for who we are, whereas other times we might just need to change our thoughts about the situation. So I think it is something where we adapt in our thinking philosophies and in our therapeutic lenses, to give the client exactly what they need.
Got it. Awesome. Okay. Well, was that your list of acronyms?
That was my list of acronyms to keep it short, try to keep it
Wonderful.
concise
Right.
for everyone.
Probably can't absorb more than that. So well, thank you for that. That's really helpful, and keeping it concise is probably
Mhm,
even more helpful. Which of do you want to speak a little bit to what you guys offer at Open Minds? Is it all the
mhm.
things you just listed, or what do you specialize in, and where can families reach out? Oh, and ages too.
Yeah, we are at openmindpsychological.com. We're in the Plymouth meeting area. We specialize mostly in CBT. We're all versed in DBT, ACT, um, as well as we do full evaluations with our psychologist, Brianna. Um, so we do a lot of different things, but a lot of what we talked about today, we can help you with, and we aren't afraid to refer out to get you the best support that you need.
Wonderful. And remind me of the ages that Open Minds works with.
Oh, well, I think from 2 years old to
To adults.
however old you can be.
Right.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, that is super helpful. As I already told you before, I love watching your reels. If anyone's watching and you don't follow Open Minds on social media, you absolutely should. Peter's like my daily little sip of whatever mindfulness, or my tip for the day. And I make my son watch too. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's hard to know if what you're putting out there is being seen, but I can tell
Mhm.
you, at least by me, it
Perfect.
is seen
Well,
and
thank
appreciated.
you. One person is enough too,
Right,
especially.
exactly. Well, and when I force my son, it's two. So there you
Yeah,
go.
perfect.
He's annoyed in the moment, but I know he thinks about it later.
Yeah.
So thank you. We appreciate your time, your expertise. I'm sure I will encounter more confusing things, and we can have you guys back to demystify it for us. And anybody that needs help, go visit openmindpsychological.com. And thank you, Peter, for joining me today.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.